Welcome action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time, as we do another one of our season-ending bonus episodes. I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and this time we're looking at 1996's Mission Impossible. Now, as previously explained on other season-ending bonus episodes, we picked the bonus episode based on it being connected to the main season in some way, but led by an action star we won't be doing a whole season on. Unlike the three previous editions we did, where I connected it with a director or a co-star, initially I chose this one purely on thematic terms, as both The Saint from our Val Kilmer season and Mission Impossible are disguise-heavy spy movies based on 1960s TV shows. Plus, obviously, Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer starred together in Top Gun, but that was the 80s, not the 90s, so not a direct connection. However, deep diving into this film's cast, I did find a connection amongst cast members, as it turns out that British actor and comedian David Schneider cameos both in this film and The Saint. Anyway, now that that's all explained, let me introduce my co-hosts. First up, we have my regular partner in crime. You know who he is. He's 1/3 of the Bloodhound Picks podcast. He's a screenwriter, and he's always on the edge of being disavowed from this podcast. Mr. Craig Draheim.
1, 2, 3. Toast.
And as well as Craig, we also have friend of the show, making his third appearance. It's writer, director, Mr. Adam Stovall. Or at least we think it's Mr. Adam Stovall. Maybe later in the episode it will be revealed that he was actually Jon Voight in disguise this whole time.
You've never seen me very upset. And I am not Jon Voight.
Not Jon Voight. If later on in an episode he starts giving controversial opinions on various political things, we'll know that he is actually Jon Voight.
I actually have a Jon Voight story for you one of these days about that specific thing.
Oh, okay. You can tell us all about that straight after I give the background details on the film as I normally do in each episode.
So 2 hours from now, great.
No, it's just the little bit of the rest of the intro where I just round up the credits and all that stuff that it's critical ratings and all the normal stuff that I do. So I'll quickly do that, and then we can get straight to your story. Mission Impossible was released on May the 22nd, 1996. It was directed by Brian De Palma, who you may know from such films as Scarface, The Untouchables, Carrie, a bunch of other things. The writing credits are a bit more of a complicated situation. So the story credit went to David Koepp, who wrote Jurassic Park, amongst many other things, and Steven Zaillian, who wrote Schindler's List, amongst many other things, while the screenplay credit went to Koepp and Robert Towne, who is most famous for writing Chinatown. Although there was an original script from husband and wife writing team Willard Huck and Gloria Katz, but that was discarded, and I should have mentioned that they wrote the likes of American Graffiti and Temple of Doom and Howard the Duck.
You know why they brought in Robert Towne?
Yes, I know. So the Willard Huck and Gloria Katz's script was thrown out. David Koepp was then brought onto the project for $1 million, apparently, and he rewrote. And then apparently Robert Towne was brought on by Tom Cruise himself.
Because Koepp had to go direct the trigger effect.
Yes.
And they needed a writer during production.
But then Koepp was rehired, and there was various times where they were in Prague in different hotel rooms writing different scenes, and it's, there was...
A wonderfully efficient process.
Well, apparently there was a time, we'll talk about it in the middle of the movie, the kind of betrayal scene where it's revealed that somebody has betrayed somebody else, which we'll discuss. Well, we'll be mysterious
Spoilers.
about it now, but we'll discuss it further. But apparently, at that point, Robert Towne was writing in between takes, doing rewrites in between takes. So, very efficient production, yes. So critically, it's currently sitting at a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb, 66% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 61 reviews, 59 out of 100 on Metacritic based on 29 reviews, and it has a 3.5 on Letterboxd. Box office wise, it made a staggering $457.7 million off of an $80 million budget, making it the third biggest movie of 1996, which was pretty lucky all round, as Paramount originally wanted to make it for between $40 and $50 million. But anyway, that's all the background information now given. So you can give us your Jon Voight story now, Adam.
So the very first TCM Fest, Turner Classic Movies has done a film festival for years. Very first one I covered because I was still with Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and they were doing all these great Q&As. Like, they showed the 70mm roadshow print of 2001 and had Douglas Trumbull. They showed The Graduate and had Buck Henry. They showed Good, Bad, and the Ugly and had Eli Wallach. They showed Midnight Cowboy and had Jon Voight. And I would go to these screenings and then plug into the sound system to record the Q&A, and we would then release it as part of the Creative Screenwriting Podcast. And I had just a few months prior been to a Midnight Cowboy event that was Dustin Hoffman talking, and it was great. It was insightful and funny, and it was awesome. And then this is, of course, Jon Voight talking about Midnight Cowboy, so I'm expecting something similar. Plug in, he gets up there, and he's just, and the person, and I think it was Peter Biskind who was doing the Q&A, and before Peter Biskind can even get into a question, Jon Voight says, my friend, or no, maybe Peter had asked a question, but Jon Voight, nary a fuck given, he said, my friend Rich Little is here, and he'd like to tell you what it would sound like if so-and-so played, and Rich Little comes up and just starts doing all these impressions of Ronald Reagan saying, screaming, "I'm walking here" and stuff. And it was just bizarre. And then they segued from that into a total pre-MAGA right-wing political rally. And I've never seen, it's in the Egyptian theater. Right. And you never think that the Egyptian theater will host a right-wing political rally, but it got to a point where I was kind of I think I may need to leave. This seems like it might get dangerous. He is insane and does not care at all what anyone else thinks or wants.
Jesus Christ.
I really don't think Peter ever asked the second question.
Wow.
Yeah.
But his career is interesting for that fact. Same with Charlton Heston, where you look at him when he was young. He did, Midnight Cowboy, Deliverance. It's all of these he worked with.
Worked with Hal Ashby.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Anywho, that's a Jon Voight story. Peter Biskind asked the question, when you're making Midnight Cowboy, do you know you're making something great? And which is a total softball and not a real question anyway. But yeah, Jon Voight was just anyway, Rich Little. It was very bizarre.
That's insane. That is really insane.
So much like Mission Impossible, he turned on Peter Biskind. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
You are indeed. So before we get into the movie fully, if you want to go first, Adam, tell us your relationship to this movie, when you first saw it, how many times you've seen it, whatever.
I love this movie. It's probably my favorite franchise of films. And I saw this opening weekend, probably opening night, 1996. I was a senior in high school, or it was my senior year. I think it was a summer release, so it would have been just before school started. But I remember getting my hair cut shorter because I loved it so much that I was like, I want that haircut. I bought the soundtrack, which had the U2 version of the theme song. I don't remember how many times I saw it in the theater. I was just telling Craig, I saw Mission Impossible Fallout like at least 4 times in the theater, and I've seen it at least 10 times total now. But I hadn't watched, even though I love this, I hadn't watched the original in actually quite a few years. So this was a really great excuse to go back, and I just love it. It's like a well-worn coat. You just slide in and you feel comfortable. I love the pacing of it. I love the weird De Palma-ness of it. I just adore it. Yeah.
Excellent. And Craig, what about you?
Yeah. So I watched this when it was on, it would have just came out on VHS. And I remember the first time I watched it, the only thing that I ever took from it, I know I said this off air, was that I didn't even remember. I mean, I knew there was the dangling big set piece that is so famous, but the main thing I remembered was the Emilio Estevez death. And that was because I'm a big hockey fan. I grew up in hockey country, and I love the Mighty Ducks, which is how they link. And I haven't watched those in years, but anyways. And then I watched, and I didn't really think about it for a while. I saw the second one a few times, and then when the third one came along, I went back and rewatched it. And no, I ended up loving it, and I would agree with Adam. This has kind of become one of my favorite franchises, even though I've probably only seen all the other ones except 1 and 2 one time, maybe. Yeah, I think one time a piece, but I don't know. I just love overly kind of complicated plots, and kind of what they do with it is just fun for me. And so,
yeah. Okay.
It also has that weird thing where it has an overly complicated plot, but it also doesn't care about its own plot.
Yeah, and it's
no, it doesn't.
And it's still accessible and being almost like a comfortable popcorn flick. I think it's not.
Oh yeah. Because like a lot of spy flicks, it's like all the plots are a game of follow the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really, I loved this film as a kid. I didn't see it in cinemas. I definitely bought it on video, and I watched it a lot on video. And I've always really liked this film. And when we were started doing this podcast, because I love making lists, I on my letterbox, I drew up a kind of top 50 90s action movies, which I've still not made public yet because I'm continually tinkering with it, so it still says private. But I'll release it to the world at some stage. Or maybe even by the time this episode airs, because it's not going to air for months after this recording. So this is only the second time we've covered a movie that is in my top 20. And I definitely rate it highly. I have an odd relationship with the franchise, I would say. It's I never class it as one of my top franchises, but I always enjoy them. I'm always oh, that was good. I enjoyed that. I don't have a deep well of love like I do for other for example, I do not love the Mission Impossible franchise as much as I love the Bond franchise.
Okay. Yeah. I have very little. I don't really care for the Bond franchise overall, but I have friends who I feel like every time they see it, see a Mission Impossible movie, they're just well, that didn't need to be that good. And I heard that. I remember after Fallout, I heard that from so many people. This movie could have been that did not need to be that good. Yeah, that's what they do. They have an insane amount of money, and they just travel the world and come up with shit.
Yeah.
And you have Chris McQuarrie, who loves solving narrative problems and puzzles. But yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. I think, you know, it's kind of a franchise that doesn't really need, or as much as Tom Cruise registers as like a thirsty person. Mm-hmm. It's not really a thirsty franchise. No. Like, it's kind of there to be taken for granted.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, for sure. And like I say, like, Fallout, like, we will get into the plot of this movie. We always, I said that, you know, before the recording, we won't really get into the franchise much, but we gotta. So, like, since we're here, we're already in this ballpark, so we're gonna run with this. So Fallout kind of reignited my interest in the Mission Impossible films, I have to say. Because, for me, I loved the first one. I think the second one is a great guilty pleasure watch, but in a bad movie. And then the third one, I just kind of found I was like, and then I was kind of felt kind of over the franchise. I was like, I'm kind of over it. So, and then I didn't watch 4 or 5. And then for I don't know, just because everybody hyped it so much, I was like, oh, I suppose I'll watch Fallout, I guess. But then I loved it. And then I was like, oh shit, now I've got to go back, because I'm a completist, like, you know, so I'm like, oh god, I gotta go back and watch 4 and 5 now. So I did that, and I enjoyed them. I thought, you know, I enjoyed 5 more than 4, but like, I enjoyed them both. And yeah, they're all kind of, yeah, like, they're just solidly made. I suppose, like, as much as I admire these films for their action set pieces, like, I think like I'm drawn most to like colorful characters. Right. And like, I suppose like, so in some ways I am drawn more to other spy franchises. Like, I've not seen the last Bourne movie, which apparently isn't that good. And Bourne Legacy is like, you don't need to watch that. But like the Bourne trilogy, I find that they've got more complex and interesting characters, and Bond has more colorful characters. Yeah. And like, I think that's what makes those movies memorable to me. Whereas like, in my head, like, the Mission Impossible movies get like all jumbled, because it's just a bunch of action set pieces in my head. Of like, you know, like, if I was to think about Ghost Protocol right now, I'm like, do I remember any of the characters? No. What do I remember? He climbs the Burj Khalifa. He outruns a sandstorm. Do you remember anything else? Not much, no.
What I'll say though is what I appreciate, I guess, opposed to, you know, Bourne and Bond, is that, and I know we talked about this off air a little bit, is that Mission Impossible, I like the fact that it's going in the, not a complete ensemble route. It's still definitely Tom Cruise's movie, but like, it is becoming more and more this group dynamic. I think that's when it works well. And I know we're going to talk about when we get into the movie of wanting, because you and I both agreed on it, Scott, of we wish there was more showing of that team in the beginning, because I don't know.
Well, you know, like, before we get too far past it, like, speaking of, you know, when Scott talking about the Bourne movies, like, especially the Bourne Identity, like, it felt revolutionary when you watched it opening weekend. Like, it is kind of why, you know, a lot of us love watching no budget and low budget horror and sci-fi and whatnot, is because they don't have the money for all the great effects, you get a lot of really cool ideas. And it felt like, you know, and Doug Liman obviously cut his teeth in the low to no budget world, but like, it felt like them really engaging with the genre and with like, what is an action story and what does an action hero have to be, you know. And I still remember the moment when he like pulls the map off the wall so that he knows where to go to get out. And it's just like, I don't think I've ever seen that in a movie before. Like, that's great. Yeah. And, you know, with the rest of the franchise, like, especially, the last few years of like making, like as a filmmaker myself, like, and learning so much about the process, I love listening to Chris McQuarrie talk about how they make Mission Impossible movies, because it's very validating to be like, they have $180 million and they don't have a script. Like they're figuring it out as they go. And, and he said, he was just like, at this point, like, we just go out into the world and we're like, all right, what's interesting? Like okay, that's a cool spot. We can do a sequence there and use the location in this way, whether it's the opera house or a motorcycle chase through, Paris. And with, it's just, and I think it was Rogue Nation when they decided, like, let's make this about the team. Like, let's really make this about what it is to make a movie, and, how it kind of comes together through chance, and you plan, but you never know if it's going to go that way. And I think that's probably why, like, now Benji is such a huge part of it. Luther obviously has been there since the beginning. Now we have Ilsa Faust. Like, you have these very strong, like, even if they're not vibrant in a way that like leaps, that makes you think of them amongst the greatest characters in all cinema, they have very defined roles, and what everyone brings to the table. And if you were to make a Mission Impossible movie without Benji, you would miss Benji, not just because he's Simon Pegg, but because he genuinely brings something to the team dynamic. They better never make one without Ilsa Faust, or I will riot in the streets. But yeah, like, I don't know. I said it before, I love these movies, and it's only intensified as I get to know more and more about filmmaking.
Well, yeah. Well, I suppose I was going to say it's a mighty defense of the franchise, but like I wasn't really tearing the franchise down. I think we're all on the same page that we're fans. We're just different levels of fans, I suppose.
I know. It really is that thing of like, I love this movie. I think it's all right. Pistols at dawn, sir. How can you not love something that
I know. And I do, because this is one of my kind of childhood action movies. So I do love this movie. Like I just said, I just have like a more, but again, I don't really dislike any of the movies. It's some of them, I just like, I suppose they just don't leap out at me in the same way as some other franchises as a franchise overall. But I love this movie. I love Fallout. I'd be very interested to see what they do with 7 and 8. But we've got to get into this film. So yes, I'll kick off the plot of this film and then we'll throw it out. So this film opens Kiev, Estevez as Jack. I can't remember his surname now. His character he's called Jack Harmon, I think. Yes. He is watching a screen. Somebody is being interrogated. It's clearly Tom Cruise in a mask, but not the person being interrogated. The interrogator. And and he's interrogating a guy. They're trying to get a name. Tom Cruise Ethan Hunt manages to get said name from this guy. It's like it's an interesting little scene. Like there's like a moment in the scene I thought was quite funny, because like when he takes a drink with the guy, like he throws the drink out, but he does it like right in front of his face. And I was like, surely, I know like the guy like it's like his drink is like poisoned and he dies almost immediately after that. But I just feel like, surely he would have noticed that being thrown out in front of his face like that.
He was in the middle of drinking though.
Yeah.
He does it when the guy's head's tilted back and his eyes are closed because he's drinking.
Fair enough. Yep. I'll go with it. It just
There's so many ridiculous things in this movie that at least has somewhat of an explanation.
I know. Yes, there is a bunch of ridiculous things. We will talk about my favorite ridiculous thing in the Mission Impossible movies, and it's none of the physics defying stuff, none of the big stunt stuff. But the one thing that amuses me most about the Mission Impossible franchise, we will talk about probably later. We'll talk about it later, towards the end. Anyway, we get our first mask pull, so that's cool. and it's basically the place they were interrogating, this hotel room they were interrogating him, and it's revealed to be a set, and that's quite a fun moment. And we know that Emmanuel Bert is in the film as well, because she's pretending to be dead and is woken up by Ethan Hunt, who looks really concerned, as if her acting is so convincing that it's like she actually is dead, but like, no, she's fine. And I want to point out that in my plot notes that I wrote for this film, every time the theme tune comes on, I've written in all block caps that theme tune, because it deserves that, because that Lalo Schifrin theme is it's one of the most amazing things about this franchise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
I just saw somebody on Twitter the other day say, like, the skip intro button has killed TV theme songs. And it's like, we'd already been kind of losing. You don't get Lalo Schifrin, nobody's hiring Alvin Silvestri to write the theme song for their show in 2021, which is sad.
Yeah. And then, like, I do feel like, we've had the best TV theme tunes, like all the kind of all my favorite TV theme tunes are like from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, really.
I think about it sometimes because like Golden Globes or Emmys, or they'll play the music while the person's walking up, and I remember when Lost was airing, like the theme song for Lost is "Bong," and just I remember like is that what they're gonna play and they don't, they play something else, but it's just I don't know. I mean, obviously music matters a lot to me, and I think about themes a lot, but yeah, I do miss when you had the great like Cheers, and yeah, just really great MASH, great theme tunes to these songs, these shows. And
I think like in terms of instrumental, like I was gonna say, there's been some great theme tunes of more recent shows, but all the shows I'm thinking of are like 15 to 20 years old. But
Batman's theme.
Like,
I mean, it's RGD too.
Like, in terms of like songs, not theme tunes, not like instrumental theme tunes, but in terms of like songs that were made that made the theme tune of a show, like like the likes of like The Sopranos, Sons of Anarchy, Boardwalk Empire, they all have good theme tunes. Like opening songs that start the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will we ever get another It's Gary Shandling's theme? I love that one so much. What happens next?
What happens next is like during the opening credits we get a highlight package of the film. And which is kind of weird because as much as I should have said at the top of the show, plot spoilers, because we talk about the whole plot from beginning to end. That's the whole point of this show. If you've not listened before, I should have said, and if you've not seen it, we're going to talk about it also. We'll go watch it, come back and listen to this. But the film itself gives plot spoilers right at the start, because you can clearly see that like the members of the team like dying at the start in the highlight package of the film. Well, certainly Kristen Scott Thomas's character Sarah, who is stabbed in the highlight package of the opening of the film. You're like, oh right, so she's gonna die soon. I guess that seems weird that you're revealing that to me now, but okay, cool.
Well, and that's where it kind of feels like the nod to a TV series in a way.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And also cool. Like pacing, like the way we pace stories. Then, like when you're watching a movie in the mid-90s, like that, like information being thrown at you that fast, you almost don't process. Movies were in the midst of changing quite a bit in that decade. But yeah, like I mean, if my dad was sitting down and watching pretty much anything that happens in those opening credits, he'd be like, I don't know what any of that meant. All right, it's like usual non sequiturs.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point, because like in terms of like the speed of storytelling, there is a clear difference between like this film and like like the likes of Fallout, and it's hilarious that of the many of the original cast members who like turned down roles in this movie, Martin Landau was one of them, and one of his kind of things that one of his reasons that he turned it down was it's too action based. You know, like the series is more kind of spy series, mind games. You know, like it's more to do. It's more to do with that. It's not this kind of fast actiony thing. Whereas, like, if you compare this to like modern blockbusters, it's like, oh, this is like a measuredly paced, tinky spy thriller. You know?
Yeah. Paul Greengrass is not making this movie.
That is a very fair point. It's not going a million miles there. But that's the other thing. Yeah, some of the original cast members were reached out to like for this film, but like turned it down, including Peter Graves, who played the original Jim Phelps in the original. They
wanted him to play Jim Phelps in this, yeah.
Yeah, but he turned it down because when he found out the reveal, which we'll talk about, he didn't like that. He saw it as a betrayal of the show, and he didn't want that. If Peter Graves had played Jim Phelps, I wonder if they would have still hired Emmanuel Bert to be his wife, because Peter Graves is even older than Peter Graves. The late Peter Graves has passed away some years ago, but he was born in 1926, so he's like a full 12 years older than Jon Voight. So
De Palma would have made it work.
Because you have in that case, you would have had like a 70-year-old man married to a 33-year-old. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, that would never fly in a Hollywood film.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. It's like the crazy age difference between Catherine Zeta-Jones and Sean Connery in Entrapment. And you're like, come on now.
No, like all those cast members of the show really, like, they were not shy about expressing their dismay at the film, and I know like some of them walked out. I don't know if they were at the premiere or not, but like walked out before it was done because they just thought it was very disrespectful to the original series.
Yeah, absolutely. And I reading about it, it seems like at the time there was fans of the original series who really didn't like some of the plot twists that happened in this movie, and were not had some of the similar complaints to Martin Landau, and also had some complaint connected to a reveal that we will not.
Fair.
But
we have Voight on a plane.
Next, we have Voight on a plane. Yes, because in this movie,
I am tired of these motherfucking Voights on this motherfucking plane. Sorry.
And we get some fun spy games because we found out that Jim Phelps is not a fan of cinema. He prefers theater, but he is interested in Ukrainian cinema.
Aren't we all?
And of course, this is where he gets the mission and famous Mission Impossible style. Before we head off to Prague, and like being a kind of 90s action movie, we're told told all these things at the bottom of the screen, like in any spy movie, really. You're always told where you are, so you can always keep tabs. And basically, after Jim Phelps gets his mission, then he imparts that mission to his team, which is made up of Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, obviously, and Jack Harmon, played by Emilio Estevez, Sarah Davies, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, and Claire, played by Emmanuel Bert, and there's another team member. Oh yeah, Hannah, who is just, a character who barely registers at all. It's like, she's there, and she's not.
Yeah.
But I don't know, how many lines does Hannah have? Like 2 lines or something?
She's up in the balcony at one point, and she says, a couple when she
says he's in pocket.
Yeah.
That's right. I genuinely don't know if she has a second line.
Yeah.
And I really don't know how you say her name. I'm looking at it on IMDb, and it is a lot.
Ingeborg, it's something like Ingeborg Dapkunit.
Yeah.
Ingeborg Dapkunit. Yes, that's my best. I'm sorry if I've mangled that name.
I know. I applaud you. I applaud your effort.
And then we get the flashback of her when Ethan is kind of figuring everything out, which will happen later.
Right.
But then that
is true.
It. But I will say, and I know we talked about this prior, and I don't know, there is this kind of comfortability with the team that I really liked, and they're kind of joking with each other, and they're joking with Jim, and kind of talk about how, he was sipping on champagne or whatever, having this time of luxury and all this stuff. And no, it felt authentic in this way, and it really makes you, especially knowing what will happen in just like 5 or 10 minutes, you're like,
yeah,
man, I wish they drew this out more or something, because especially Cruz and Estevez work really well together. And I know we mentioned this prior.
Yeah.
There's an interesting, now that you mention it, there is a really interesting thing, because like Luther eventually replaces, Jack in the function of basically the team's IT guy. And like Ethan seems to have like an appreciation for IT. And, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, and you feel especially when we get into what happens, you feel the weight when he comes across, every time he comes across one of his teammates, and I don't know, it makes it all the better, I guess, of why moving forward, instead of if you just saw them all killed and then we didn't go on and whatever.
Yeah, but like Jack seems to be a bit. He does kind of different things, because he is a kind of hacker IT guy, but he also gives Ethan the explosive gum. So like it seems like he is also Ethan's Q at the same time as well, because just like Bond needs to use everything given to him by Q. That explosive gum is.
Yeah, but how many pieces did he give him? Because
I thought it was only the one. And then...
Well, maybe off camera he gave him the whole pack.
He found the pack.
Exactly. Yes. There we go. That's another mystery solved. Like my earlier complaint. Like, do you know what? Like, it's the weird things you notice on rewatch, because I've seen this movie a bunch of times, and like one of the weird things, it was like when Jim is giving like the debrief of like what's going to happen, when he's saying like when they need to regroup, he's like, we need to regroup at he says like 4 a.m. like in a couple of different ways, and I was like, that seems entirely unnecessary. It's like 4 o'clock, 4 a.m., 4 o'clock, 4 a.m.
That's 0400.
Like, stop saying that. It's fine. We understand.
They're a team of professionals. They'll get it.
Jim Phelps is getting a little old. He's getting a little dodgy in the head,
Well, that's it. Yeah. He says like, 400. That's 4 a.m. It's like, we know.
So next up we have that crew. Well, Ethan Hunt is in a disguise, but we don't know what he is specifically, because it's his POV, while Jim is kind of running the show from a computer and telling each person where to go and how to handle.
I do love that, like, they didn't even have, like, okay, we're going to have a person play this, and then Tom Cruise, like, we'll have them again. Like, it's just Tom Cruise in a mask already as the senator.
Yes, because when you see the TV interview, you're like, he's in a mask. He's just don't. He's in a mask. He's like, they didn't have like a separate act. That's fine.
And then you see the sequels later on where you're like, Tom Cruise is underneath a mask that is Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's definitely they don't share the same body type at all.
Well, yeah, so, okay, well, we'll just talk about it now, right? That is my number one silliest thing in the Mission Impossible franchise. That once you put the mask on, you also take on the same height and body type as the person you're impersonating.
I don't want to blow your mind, but Mission Impossible takes place in the Potterverse, and magic is real.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. That explains everything. of all, like, I don't mind, like, when action movies are silly in terms of, like, oh, they couldn't possibly survive that fall and that explosion and you know, walk around normally while they've got a gunshot wound in their shoulder or whatever. But, like, the one thing that amuses me most is, like, why does he, like, how is he the same height and weight as these people? Like, or what? Right. How does that happen? You're just wearing a mask, right?
And honestly, I truly love, I mean, he's my favorite actor anyway, but Philip Seymour Hoffman playing Tom Cruise, playing him, is just one of my favorite things. You know, when he's just like very sternly putting up the 1 minute, you know, finger while he coughs because he can't, you know, the voice simulation hasn't happened yet. Like, I can't even explain it. I just love that moment because he genuinely seems like Tom Cruise, like in the face. And it's like, that's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good thing.
And so the plan seems to be going well for the most part. They're able to get down into the basement to kind of set up so they can get the evidence on the ambassador to get so that he's getting the NOC list. But then all these kind of weird little glitches are arising in terms of the technical issues. But they're able to kind of escape out the back door to let, you know, this guy take the phone.
No security at the back door. Yeah. Nope.
this big, you know, extravagant event with all these people, and they're just like, they walk right out. Nobody even does anything. It's actually. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, famously, U.S. embassies never put anybody at the back door.
Yeah. And then
this is a very important lesson, though, because, like, when you're writing, you want to try to, like, you're like, oh, I got to explain everything. It's like, honestly, you don't. No. Like, as long as it feels right, audiences were down. They are down to clown.
Yeah, for sure.
And it has the one way to escape any sort of suspicion is that you fake kiss each other.
Yes.
And everybody's like, oh, okay. Well, they're just
prudish Politia of Prague. You know, like, oh, we were going to ask, you know, what you're doing here, but clearly you're necking, so carry on. It would be improper of us to interrupt. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, one of the things I was going to talk about as well is, like, once they, you know, escape the back door and, like, shit starts to go sideways and people start dying. And Jack is killed, and the elevator shaft the elevator just goes right off, and he's skewered in the face.
A horrific death for a PG-13.
Yeah, really horrific death for a PG. Yeah.
I also have questions about that system of stopping an elevator. Like, why do they have knives?
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, watching it this time, I was like, as a kid, I was just always like, oh, that's a kind of cool, grisly moment, like. But you know, yeah, watching it, and I was like, why is that at the top of the? I don't know. Moving on. But also, like, you know, there's just certain scenes in this movie that you're just like, oh, this is just well done, Palma. This is just beautifully filmed.
Yeah.
So when Sarah is like just walking through the fog in the streets of Prague, it's just like, oh, that's just beautifully filmed.
Yeah. Sarah is definitely the one. As much as I like Jack, and we've talked about that, Sarah was the other one, especially this time watching it. I was like, man, I wish she was around longer. I wish they did more with her in this part.
Yeah, they really waste Kristen Scott Thomas here.
Yeah, because then her death, you really feel it probably more than the other ones when he's holding her. And
All 90s action on the record. Brian De Palma, good at directing. Kristen Scott Thomas, good at acting.
Yeah.
We're really taking some stands here.
Yeah.
We, as a show, we're very much known for our hot takes, and these hot takes are spicy today.
Tell you what, this Brian De Palma movie, very visually dynamic. It's accurate.
In more shock news.
Yes. What happens to Hannah?
Oh dear. Hannah, that character that we're really deeply invested in, is blown up in a car. Yeah.
Which he thinks, two of them, it's both Hannah and
Claire.
Yeah, Claire are blown up. What he assumes.
Yes. So at this point, he assumes that. Yeah, they really do give the most weight to Sarah's death.
Yeah.
Because they just they realize Jack's dead and they just kind of make a funny face and kind of move on. And it's the same with like Hannah and possibly Claire's, maybe not. Death is kind of like, oh, I got shit to do. I got running to do. So like, but they like give like real weight to Sarah's death. That's another interesting thing. So like once he kind of sees that Jim is dead, that he's been shot, and he runs to the Charles Bridge in Prague, to see, like that Jim's he's fallen off the bridge, that's really, and then he runs to a telephone to phone Kittredge, and that's really pretty much it on the running front. Which is surprising for a Mission Impossible movie. There's very little running in this movie.
Hadn't figured out the brand yet.
Yeah. No, they hadn't figured out the formula of like, there is just something, for some reason, there is just something visually satisfying about watching Tom Cruise running on screen.
I remember
nobody knows why.
Somebody, I think they did a compilation of all of his running moments from all of his like action movies, and since then you cannot unsee any of it. And they did it in reverse or something.
And like when I was watching this, I hit display at this point. We are 30 minutes in to an hour and 50-minute movie. Yeah. It is lean, it moves, but like, because I remember hitting that point, and I was just like, how far in are we? You know, because at this point, the pacing of movies are so different. And it's just like, so dear listener, I know we take fucking forever to talk about the first 10 minutes of a movie, but we're already into a half hour. Like, we're already a quarter of the way through this thing. So don't worry, it's not as bad as you're thinking.
That is true. That is true. This movie shifts, and we can shift through this movie pretty swiftly. I mean, like, I mean, if you listen to the show before, it's there's going to be tangents, there's going to be waffle, but we will give you information as well. Information such as the restaurant that they go to, that Ethan Hunt goes to, Aquarium, not a restaurant in Prague. No, that was a set. What did I say there? It's a set. That was a set built at Pinewood Studios. And that is definitely a production design choice, because
the exterior is it's the shot when he's running out and the water is cascading, when it's the shot with the restaurant behind the camera. That was shot in Prague.
Yes.
But yeah, you're right. The
actual restaurant front, which is like basically a series of fish tanks. It's like I would love to have been in the production meeting of like, we need a restaurant where they meet. It can just be like a normal restaurant, and then one person is like, how about if it wasn't a normal restaurant? How about if it was like kind of like a Bond villain lair, and it's going to be like a series of fish tanks throughout. Oh yeah, I suppose that would also work. We were just thinking of like just a normal restaurant that you meet, but sure, yeah.
Well, it's also just like at this point, looking back, it's so quaint that like one of the big stunts that Tom Cruise does himself is running amidst water.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Yeah, absolutely.
And then it's, in Fallout, he's strapped to a plane, whatever.
That's Rogue Nation.
Rogue Nation, yeah.
Fallout's the one where he does the Halo jump.
Yes.
Yeah.
The new one.
So I told you it gets confusing, man.
Yeah. But so he meets with Kittredge, and what he finds out is that the whole mission that they were supposed to have was basically a decoy mission, and that there was no information that would have come from the disk. And the fact, because there was a mole potentially within their team, and it all points to Ethan, who is the only survivor that they know of, and a lot of money went into his parents' account, so That's when Ethan says the line that Adam said earlier of "You've never seen me upset," and he gets to use the gum because if he's going to be going down, he's going to have to go rogue. One of the key components of a Mission Impossible movie.
That's right.
Absolutely. Because he is, we later found out, for the first time, he has been disavowed. This franchise's favorite word in the dictionary.
We should make a no-budget version of this called Disavowed.
Yeah.
Should do the Roger Corman thing. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we totally should.
Let's do it.
Is this before or after our Copland miniseries that we were pitching to Netflix?
Whichever one gets us the money.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Look out for Disavowed in cinemas 2023.
Oh.
Dude. But before we before he says those iconic word that he's been disavowed, we have some plot mechanics to deal with.
Yes.
So he gets back to the hideout, and he is trying to find out who Job is, and but then
that doesn't come before the restaurant because.
He comes after it comes after the restaurant. He goes back to the hideout after he runs out of the restaurant, and then he's trying to find out who Job is, and then he realizes, and then he sees, handily he sees a copy of the Bible, and he's like, oh, not Job 3:14, but Job 3:14, and then he manages to crack that code, and then has apparently an exhausting night of emailing. Like he's just
different languages.
Just see this kind of montage of scenes of him typing at a computer, and they're just mopping sweat off his brow. And I was like, I mean, that's some. I've sent a lot of emails in a day, and it's never had that.
I love that UI though. I love that email user interface. It would feel so satisfying if you're like writing an email to somebody and then it goes like a letter off and
that'd be cool. Yeah, I really like that too. Yeah, that's brilliant.
90s internet, or the internet in 90s movies, just fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, some good stuff.
I will say, this is not connected at all, but yeah, no, I agree. I rewatched Hackers. I was like, man, yes. I'd love to see a movie that is just like a throwback to all the 90s hacking movies where it's not like connected at all to what hacking really is, and just all of the joys that was.
I don't know if you follow Sarah Benincasa on Twitter, but it's like one of her things is just to remind the world that Sneakers is a good movie.
Oh, okay.
It makes me so happy. Like, yeah, Sneakers was awesome. Yeah. I remember being a kid and watching the shit out of that movie. Yeah.
I enjoy that movie as well. Yeah, 90s hacking is like we did an episode back in season 2 on Assassins, and it has fun 90s hacking in it. As Julianne Moore plays a hacker character. That looks like very much like a Wachowski sister's character. She's got all the leather jacket and all the cool shades and all the very on brand Wachowski.
Yeah.
I suppose in terms of movie hacking, in the 90s it got more and more ridiculous, the kind of movie hacking as compared to hacking in real life, and then it reached peak ridiculousness with Swordfish, and then nothing could really top the stupidity of that. So they just left it alone.
Yeah, you can't re-jump the shark.
No, you can't. You can.
Yeah, I remember when Michael Mann's Black Hat came out, and watching it and being like, oh man, this isn't fun hacking. I want something fun.
I've also listened to Sam Esmail talk so many times about the crappy hacking or the crappy portrayal of hacking in movies is what prompted Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about things that aren't Mission Impossible. Sorry.
Yes. Well, thanks for getting us out of Tangent Corner there, Adam. We're back. We're back with this movie.
And Claire shows up. We forgot to
Claire
while
shows
he's
up.
doing his emailing.
But she's dead.
Yeah. Now, like, we talked earlier about 4 o'clock. Now, so Emmanuel Burt has her kind of Oscar moment. Earlier, Tom Cruise had his Oscar moment. So Tom Cruise's Oscar moment, what we didn't talk about, is when he phones Kitteridge. And he's like, you don't understand, the team's dead. The list is in the open. And he's like, oh, okay, it's cool. And then, but we come back to where we are. Emmanuel Burt has her Oscar moment where she just writhes about on a bed going, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
After he's carefully broken a light bulb to let him know when somebody's, where other spies, always bad spies. I don't know, but yeah, I think his little system of like, they'll step on the glass. And then he almost, he almost shoots her. She fell asleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right, because we have that.
We have a kind of Freddy moment where like it's actually a dream. It's all like Jim's back from the dead. He's all bodied. Oh no, it's just a dream. We know it's a dream because like Jim's voice is in that kind of weird echoey thing. So you're like, he's definitely dreaming. And then it's Claire.
I needed you, Ethan. I needed you, Ethan. Ethan.
But he does finally hear from Mac.
He does indeed.
The arms dealer who, as Scott said, all the villains in the franchise are either arms dealers or agents.
And as we come to learn later, the franchise is part of a family business, apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently so. And then we go to meet Max is where we're going to next. We get he has to pick up a packet of Dunhills and then ask for a match from somebody at a bus stop playing more spy games. And we meet that person, we meet the henchman, and it's all done from POV. And and then we jump into the car. He's put a balaclava over his head so he can't see. And then he's a very smooth talker because basically the henchmen are like, no, Max can't be seen by anybody. And then he's like, I can't be doing my talking through this balaclava. And then Max is just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, take it off. It's like, oh, well, that was...
I think it was like the writers and the producers and the director in the room just like, well, I mean, of course he has to like have a sack put over his head when you go to... It's like, yeah, but it's Tom Cruise. We're not going to keep a sack over his head. Like, just get it off of him. Like, whatever. Just say whatever.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. It's like, this is the big star of our movie. We're not going to have like a long scene where he talks through a balaclava. We need to see that $1 million smile, goddammit.
And so when he gets off, she is testing this floppy disk, and he is pretty much saying that he's giving a time frame that it's not real, and the list is going to be a fake, and it's just going to have a kind of tracking device that they're going to be here in about 5 minutes, and he's going through it, and you can kind of see this bluff between the two of them or is she going to call his bluff or is it real? And it's a great little tension moment, and then you start seeing that there are agents under Kittredge who then kind of break in, but they are already gone. And Kittredge just loves to yell at Barnes for some reason.
Yeah. So, like, in this whole sequence, there's a couple of weird things that I noted in my notes that I wrote. First of all, when they're checking out the floppy disk, I wrote down, could have wiped the blood off that disk. They've had that disc, they picked up a wee while ago, it seemed like the obvious thing to do, but not just a bloody disc.
Will the audience know that it's the same disc?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, obviously, a visual signifier. Like, that's the filmmaker in you there, Adam. That's obviously, you've trumped me once again. Also, like, I love noticing like extras who are really beefing up their part. There's a guy who is at the other side of the hall to try and get Max, who we found out is actually Maxine, deliciously played by Vanessa Redgrave. And when Kittredge is chewing out Barnes, that same guy with the silencer pistol is just like walking back and forth in the hallway, like kind of like just doing like different poses with the silencer pistol. And I'm like, that's you're really trying to get a bit of screen time now.
I will give it to Max that no, she is played very charming, and there is actually a lot of, especially watching it this time, I'm like, man, there's a lot of sexual tension going on. You could cut with a knife between her and Ethan.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which, like, especially considering as the film goes on, because there is no sexual tension between him and Emmanuel Bert.
No.
And then, like, there's the idea of tension between him and Tandy Newton. But, like, really until Rebecca Ferguson, there isn't anything really between him and a female character, even though in every movie women are falling in love with him constantly.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, it was like interesting, like, oh hey, there was a time when, you know, I mean, now I hope Ethan and Ilsa are having a lot of fun together. But yeah, like, and then, I mean, just Vanessa Redgrave like playing it with a wink and him playing it with a wink, it's like, man, this works.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, because like that's the only sexual chemistry I believe in the movie.
Yeah,
by far. I mean,
even though Jack really wanted sexual chemistry with Sarah.
Yes, that is true. He was hitting on Sarah at the start of the movie, and Sarah was not having any of it.
I mean, Jim and Claire are husband and wife, and they don't even have asexual chemistry. But that's on Jon Voight.
That is on Jon Voight.
It's your point, Scott, is a very good one. Like her little scene of like 400 Ethan, 4 o'clock, 400, 4 a.m. Like you've got Manon of the Spring, and just man, she does not do anything in this movie. She is there to look pretty. That is it. Which I don't know. I mean, I guess with De Palma, it's not a huge surprise.
Yeah. I mean, she is there to just look kind of sexy and pouty and talk in that kind of erotic, whispery voice.
But because even when the missions come up, she's either the driver, which we never see her actually do any of the driving, or Jean Renault and Ving Rhames, they are the ones that kind of, take the front seat, and then she just kind of is watching everything or something.
Squirts the shit into the guy's drink, and yeah. Poor Claire.
Oh yeah. Like if you had just seen Emmanuel, it's a bit like when we did the Batman Forever episode, where I was like, if you'd just seen Nicole Kidman in this film, you'd think she was not a good actress. And like, if you'd just seen Emmanuel Bert here, you'd probably think like, oh, she's not much, but like she's good in other films.
Yeah.
What if we just took the zany scenes from Moulin Rouge and made that a psychiatrist?
Yeah. We discussed enough of that film.
But I wasn't there then. So.
That's true. That's true. I was just meaning from like in terms of my comeback, I wasn't going to add to that because like.
Gotcha.
So he tells Max he'll get her the true list for enough of a price, which causes him to have to build a new team, which is where we get to meet Luther and Krieger.
Played by Marcellus Wallace. I love that he actually like looks like he's dressed like Marcellus Wallace at one point in the movie. Makes me very happy.
Yes. That is, So we meet our also disavowed agents, because we need to find more disavowed agents to work with, because obviously he can't work with official sources because the government believes that he is the mole. And those disavowed agents are as you said, Marcellus Wallace and Leon, the professional.
But reverse, because this version of Leon is very trigger happy, and
that is true.
Marcellus Wallace is just a nice, friendly guy.
Cuddly Marcellus Wallace and Psycho Leon. And basically Ethan tricks them both into joining them by like kind of flaunting their reputations in front of them and being like, well, I heard on the grapevine from the, like secret underground service grapevine that you could do all this cool shit, but now I don't believe it so much. And they're like, well, we can, and I will prove it. I will get the thing in 24 hours. And I can hack anything.
That's right.
I guess since it's been a while, this would be a question for Adam. So with Luther, he's supposed to be the hacker tech guy. So how does, in the later sequels, he kind of takes a backseat and becomes almost like the driver and because Simon Pegg becomes kind of the hacker.
Well, so Luther is very happy to just be. He also is like, because he is reavowed. I don't know. He's brought back in. So, like, I know in Rogue Nation, he's on another mission and, like, hacks a satellite in order to, like, help them. Benji is wanting to be a field agent. So he gets a bit more, like, active, and Luther is very comfortable to just sit at his laptop.
Okay. That's why I was trying to remember watching it.
I mean, he is still, like, basically, like, Benji's in the field with, like, I think my favorite thing is in Rogue Nation when he has the book that's a computer, like the pages. I love that device. I love it. But there's a bit of redundancy, but at the same time, like, we've become so internet centric and so tech centric as a society that it kind of works to have two people that can do that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it works for me.
You can now see, like, Scott sent out a list of, like, these are all the movies we're going to cover. And, like, literally my email back was like, I'm fine with these, but I have to be on Mission Impossible.
Yes, I remember that.
You are seeing why.
Yeah. I always knew I had to have you on this one. So that's...
It's so, even at the beginning here, it seems like him and Luther... Right from the bat, that Luther is the one that he can trust the most. And you don't know why, and I don't think he even knows why, but for some... him and Krieger kind of start butting heads because Krieger only wants the money, and there's all these kind of random questions, and he was found by Claire. But he specifically, him and Luther kind of buddy up.
I know, I love that Krieger's just like, you're not going to meet anyone without me. Like, this is not your lane. Like, this is wildly presumptuous, sir. Whereas Luther just seems to be over at a bar, like, I don't know what these crackers are talking about. Whatever.
That's true. But we move on with the film, and we get, and I need to, every time it happens, I've done it in block caps, and we need to say it again. That theme tune happens when we cut back to America. We're heading back to Langley, Virginia, for the head of the CIA.
For the legacy sequence.
Yes. Absolutely. And this, I mean, like, first time I saw it as a kid and watching it again today, this sequence is just amazing. So, like, Ethan kind of sets it out. We get all these kind of, like, flashes to CIA headquarters of, like, we get the kind of classic heist scene where we're talking about the heist. We're talking about how the heist has to, the security checks that we have to get through and all this kind of stuff. And then we get into it. We get a false fire alarm. That's how they get into the building. They're dressed up as firemen, and they have to get into an air vent. They manage to do that. They have to, like, knock out a security guard, which Krieger nearly kills, but Ethan's like, no, this is 0 kill count. We gotta, we gotta do it clean. And then they get up into the vent, and then, yes, probably maybe the most iconic scene from any of the Mission Impossible movies, and one of the most iconic scenes of the 90s is them this scene. So do either of you want to break down this scene for us?
Before we do, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I want to ask the listeners, like, when this goes out, what are the most iconic action sequences from the 90s? What are your top 5, top 10? But what do you think are the best action sequences of the 90s?
I mean, the ones that I know would come up a lot are this. I would say from Heat, when they're running down the street spraying guns and shooting at the cops and everything, and then I'm not sure. I know those two are always talked about, and then
I think because Heat's a kind of funny one because I don't necessarily think of that as an action movie. Some people do, some people don't. So that's a real kind of split thing. So we might get that. I think the ones that might come up a lot would be the explosion of the White House in Independence Day.
Oh yeah.
The motorbike chase in Terminator 2 when they're getting chased by the truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the one that I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think other ones.
I don't think it would, but I almost want to say something from Cliffhanger just because of how. But then I don't know what specific part. I mean,
obviously the Matrix figures in, but which scene would you choose?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, probably either. I think the Matrix would definitely fit. I think the scene that people would choose is the scene where they go into the building towards the end. There's the big fight. When they go through and the metal detector goes off and he pulls out all the guns and shit just kicks off. I think maybe that.
Honestly, I remember, and I really oddly clear memory of this, but the first time I saw it in the theater, when the helicopter goes into the building and the glass kind of spherically explodes.
Oh yeah.
I remember that I felt my mind get blown. Literally was just I've never, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a few from the Matrix. I think the Matrix would definitely figure in there. That helicopter one, possibly.
I know when he where he's dodging the bullets, just because it was parodied so much.
Yeah. The bullet time thing. Yeah.
Here's a totally random one. But the first scene of The Last Boy Scout, I can see very clearly in my head the football player that he's the running back and he runs, he scores a touchdown, and then he pulls out a gun and says "ain't life a bitch" and kills himself. It is the very first scene of that movie, but I remember that making a very big impression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. But fucking podcast is about 90s action. That seems like a question to ask our listeners.
Yeah. No, I absolutely, absolutely. I think the big. I don't know because it depends what people watch, because there's some things that are probably bigger in my head than they are in terms of their popular appeal. The big hospital finale and Hard Boiled comes to my mind, but I don't know if that is popular mainstream enough that it comes to a lot of people's mind. I don't know. Maybe it is.
I think in the state, I don't know. I don't think Hard Boiled, because John Woo didn't really get as big in the States, except with because
Face
of
Off
Face Off he did, but his
Broken Arrow,
his other stuff didn't really, except with kind of cinephiles and things like that.
Right.
I feel like.
Yeah.
Weirdly, it's 2000, but Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. It's weird. The finale of Con Air when they crash in Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. And I guess, the kiss with the nuclear explosion in True Lies.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. That was a huge tangent, but we are getting into, they get to Langley and all the shit that they've just, that Tom Cruise has just said, we have to do this, and then there's this, and these are all the precautions, and, and they're basically just telling us, it's one of the things I love about writing is just all right, well, we've come up with an idea, so here's why it's impossible. The floor, you can't touch it. And if it rises above the decibel level of this, which is apparently still loud enough for a computer to, copy its entire thing. I remember those disk drives. They were not quiet.
Yeah, that's true.
But and it's just, and it, the temperature, which really never figures in. But they kind of set up like this is all the stuff, and then it's really just like Tom Cruise goes to the circus as a trapeze artist for a few minutes, and that him running away from water was the one stunt, and then this is the other where on the Blu-ray they talk about like, oh yeah, it was really like if they had dropped him that would have hurt. And it's like cut to him strapping himself to the outside of a plane a few years later. But they get to Langley, they get past, they have the fake fire alarm, they get into the building, they get up into the vents, they have a little device for the lasers that are protecting the vent, which seems like a very easy solve. But I don't know, they're spies. They got this shit. Then he drops down into the room. There's a CIA agent whose job is to stay in that room and do something on that computer. I have no idea what. But you don't really care in the moment.
No. Like you say, like you said earlier about like you don't have to explain everything as long as it feels right, and it's just like we don't need to know what this guy does. We just need to know that we need to get him out of the room, and we're going to do it in a fun way because we're going to give him this thing that just makes him sick.
And I don't know if it's like just I'm older or whatever it is, but like when Emmanuel Bert sits down next to him, I was just noticing all the empty tables in that room, and like that guy looking the way that he does, and then her looking the way that she does. Like that guy never is just like, wait, what? Like, oh, hi, you sat down right next to me, stranger. Can I buy you a second cup of coffee? Like, there's never any of that. She's just, she sits right down, she squirts some shit into his coffee. He has to go to the bathroom a lot, and after that, which keeps him out of the room with the computer so that Tom Cruise can do his trapeze thing. And which is also lovely that like Jean Reno, like even though they have all this high tech shit, it's still like Jean Reno holding the rope up, like and then like a mouse shows up, and Jean Reno is like, no, I can't fuck with no mice. It's his Indiana Jones weakness, and that's the part when Tom Cruise almost hits the floor. And only Brian De Palma. Name me a second director that would be like, and then the sweat pools and drips. And like, that is so much tension of sweat almost dropping on the floor. Like,
yeah. Oh no, it's amazing. So it's amazing the tension. Another thing that like it really builds up the tension is there's a great moment where like we're told like what's going to, as the audience we're kind of told what's going to happen, because like Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt is like after Jean Reno's character Franz Krieger like sneezes, it's like now we need total silence. And then the music cuts out and there is total silence apart from commentary you hear from outside of the room from Luther and Claire.
That's what I was just about to say, is like you have Danny Elfman writing the score, and another movie, maybe you have very tense music, but like, no, just drop it away. It's so much worse when it's kind of like what happened with A Quiet Place. I remember seeing that in the theater, and you had people with their huge bags of popcorn, and very quickly, like no one was eating, no one was drinking, no one could make a sound. And it's just like, man, I love it when a movie just like takes everyone by the throat. And it's like, everyone shut up for a second. It's so tense.
It's amazing. And it's like, it's all these little moments. It's like the moment of like the beads of sweat, the moment of the mouse, which apparently Krieger lets go of the rope, kills the mouse, and then gets it again. Because you see like the mouse's little kind of dead body beside him. And then there's a bit where the rope kind of almost frays, and he has to get it back up again real quick, and and all the little different things, man. It's great. And apparently so he can do that kind of trapeze trick like for counterbalance, he put British pound coins in his shoes to get the right balance going on, because it wasn't working. The first few takes he did, it wasn't working. He kept like kind of falling down and just to get the right kind of thing.
I love the damns that Tom Cruise gives.
Yeah.
he gives the most fascinating damns.
Yes.
Yeah, and so like you have all of that. You have, and I mean, we could have really just said the Langley sequence, and I feel like everyone listening to this podcast would be like, "Yep." But you have all of this. And I mean, it's just a perfect realization, and they get through it. They're getting out just as William is walking back in, and then Krieger drops his damn knife, and really nothing. Like they still get out.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Like again, it just adds a little bit extra layer of tension because you get this slow-mo drop shot of the knife, but then it just lands on the desk and they scuttle away and it's all good.
Like when Brian De Palma sadly passes on, and there's tribute videos. You've got to have Phantom of the Paradise. You've got to have Sisters. You've got to. You've got to have Blowout.
The final scene of Blowout.
The museum sequence in Dress to Kill. Yeah. Like there's all these incredible. The Frankie goes to Hollywood sequence in Body Double, but like.
Say hello to my little friend from Scarface.
Yeah,
the steps, the Potemkin steps scene in Untouchables.
That's what I was about to say. Is like the step scene and the Langley sequence. Like, he's had such an incredible career, but like those two things are him kind of at his best in like big budget filmmaking. Yeah, you got to have Prom from Carrie, but like. If you put together a tribute and you don't have the Langley sequence, you did it wrong.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That was fun. I haven't actually gotten to recount any plot in these things, but like it was really fun to just kind of geek out for a second about that sequence because I love it so much. Yeah. So anyway, then they leave Langley.
Yeah. So once they get out in their fire engine, then we find out that the agent, he ends up contacting Kittredge, which Kittredge goes kind of more hassling of Barnes, and then we find out that this guy is now going to be sent to Alaska or somewhere as far away as he can just for kind of messing up. And then we get into Krieger and his
I just wanted to mention as well, like, again, just in terms of like the composition of some of these shots, I really like that you have that kind of close-up of like Kittredge and Barnes and the guy in the background. I just think it's a lovely...
You gotta have that split
shot.
diopter.
I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
You can't have a De Palma movie and not have a split diopter.
Yeah.
And then after that, we get to learn that Krieger is still very insecure, especially with the disc. And going back to what Adam was saying, that Ethan has magical abilities. Because there's the whole sleight of hand sequence where he's saying, "Oh, I had 2 floppy disks, so that's not the one that actually has the information on it. It's this one," and he's making it disappear, and it goes through this whole sequence.
Yeah, no, it's quite fun how long this scene goes on.
Yeah,
it's just like because you think it's just going to be a little bit kind of like I did this bit of sleight of hand, but then he really does like a routine of it. It was like, where's the disc? Oh, it's in Emmanuel Bert's pocket, but then I missed it disappear again. Where's the disc? Oh, it's in my back pocket. And you're like, okay, you've proved your point. You can do sleight of hand. I didn't realize you had this whole bit.
Tom Cruise learned how to do that trick, and he's like, no, we're going to do this for a while.
Yeah, I love the extended scene of that where it's just like he finds it in like everybody's pocket. It's like, oh, friends, it's in your pocket now. It's like, okay, you proved your point.
Yeah. But I think it goes back to like, when what we were saying at the beginning of loving the little bit of time we got with the team. Like, one thing this movie does really well is live with them as people in these in-between moments. Yeah. Where like, it's like, oh, you're actually getting a sense of like who Luther is and who Krieger is. Yeah.
And it gets to the point that Krieger gets so frustrated that he just throws away the floppy disk and storms out, which then you find that he actually had the real floppy disk, and only Luther sees this when Ethan picks out the garbage, and you kind of get more of this connection between Ethan and Luther,
which is so superfluous, because we see in the Langley sequence that he has 2 discs, so we already know that he's ready to kind of like replace it or whatever. Like, so when he's like, "Oh, you mean this disc?" Like, you don't need the beat of him like, "Oh, did Krieger have the real one?" Like, what the hell? Why did any of that happen then? It's like, is it all just because he wanted to do a sleight of hand scene? All right.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe that was it. Like, talking about things you don't really need, or something I thought was, there's a lot of this where, people often talk about this movie and often says, "Oh, it's got a convoluted plot and it's kind of hard to follow." And there's things, like, you really have to focus on or whatever. So it doesn't kind of hold the audience by the hand in many respects. But in this once, in this kind of scene here, where he has like the little reveal of, he opens the Bible, it's a Gideon's Bible from the Drake Hotel in Chicago, which is where Jim Phelps is at. And this is where we kind of reveal it's like, oh, he must have been the mole all along, Jim Phelps. Oh, maybe they're like, he must not be dead. And so also we're in London now. We've been told at the bottom of the screen. Yeah, but then there's like a little callback, like audio from the start of the movie to be like, "Oh, I was in the Drake Hotel," and it's like, "Oh yeah, no, wait, I did watch the film, like I don't need to be told that it's enough. The visual reveal's enough. You don't need the audio as well."
That's such a note. Like, that is such a note. I like when we were the ending of A Ghost Waits. There's a part where when Jack is alone and then the ghosts reappear and she says, "You have no one," blah blah blah. That whole thing that was an echo of what's said in the second dream. We originally, like, none of the reminder was there, and then people weren't quite getting it, so we had to actually put, like, all right, let's put that shot back in there, let's have her say this, to remind people that this was a thing. And it's like, it really is just like, sometimes you have to remind people what happened 40 minutes ago in a movie.
Okay, fair enough. Like, when you say that's such a note, is that you saying, "Scott, stop being a film critic jackass"? Is that what
No. I actually think it's a very fair point.
Okay.
Because I share your thing of, like, I have been watching this. Like, you don't have to hold my hand, but a lot of people do need their hand held. Yeah. And so when I say that's such a note, I can see, like, a producer or somebody saying, like, "Yeah, but, like, are we supposed to remember that?" And it's like, it was a half hour ago. You're in a movie theater. Why would you be distracted? But yeah.
All right. So what we pretty much get, what the fallout of that scene is, he gives Luther the disc, and even Luther says that, "Why should you even trust me?" And then because Ethan is really suspecting Claire as well, and she makes the whole comment, which we already knew, that she's the one who got Krieger and didn't know he was going to be like this, and she's sorry. But it leads into another big reveal about Jim.
Right, because he goes to call Kittredge.
Yes.
And while he's calling him, in the booth next to him is a man in a overcoat and fedora with his back to us. And then he turns around, and who is it?
It's Jon Voight, Jim Phelps.
Dun, 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 dun.
But I really do like this little scene, in the way that it's shot. I mean, we've seen it before, and after the fact too, where Jim is saying, "Oh, Kittredge is actually the mole," and he's explaining it, and then you see Ethan piecing it together, saying, "Oh yeah, Kittredge did this," but in his head, he's piecing together what actually happened. And I think, I don't know, I always kind of enjoyed that scene of like, oh yeah, that's fun, and we're seeing what's actually happening, even though he's now working with Jim of trying to make it seem like, yeah, I am still on your side.
Yeah. Oh, and I love the little beat when when Ethan asks Jim, why would Kittredge do this? And he answers why he did it, but like, that Kittredge, he's just, the president's running the country without his permission, and he's making $62,000, and his marriage is shit. And at which point I was like, wait a second. You married someone 25 years younger and you're amazed it's not working? Anyway, not the point of this movie, but yeah.
I know. I like that touch as well, where he says his own motivation as Kitcher's motivation. Oh, I was just thinking, I didn't think this while watching the movie, but just you saying how he's dressed. It'd be great if, like, I mean, obviously, spies can't work like that in the real world because everybody would know what a spy looks like. It's like, oh, who's that spy? Is it that guy in the fedora and the Mac over there? Oh yeah, it's okay.
Is that 3 children in a trench coat? So I made a note earlier because I really hadn't thought about it. But when we were talking about the sequence where everybody dies, you specifically said, and Claire, Ethan assumes. And it occurred to me that, like, this movie, the arc of, like, Ethan's arc in this movie is learning not to assume. Because it's like, it's about the death of his innocence and the fact that, like, these people that he was so close to either died or betrayed him. And it's such a fascinating character study in a way of that, of just like by the end of this movie, and especially like going forward, he's so slow to trust, and which, he's a spy, he shouldn't trust. But at the start of this, it seems like he's that Tom Cruise puppy dog character of just like, hey guys, what are we doing now? Where are we going? And like by the end, he's just like, all right, hold on a second. What's going on with you? What are you doing? Why would I trust Joe?
Yeah,
I love that. It really hadn't occurred to me before, but like something about you saying Ethan assumes is like, by the end of this, he doesn't assume anything.
That's a very. I like that. I like that. This movie is the death of Ethan Hunt's innocent. I like that. Framing of it, Adam. That's. But there was something else I wanted to mention about this scene, though. In terms of like the acting of the scene of, him telling that motivation as Kittredge's motivation, but it's actually his own motivation. Like at this point, Jon Voight is acting like a villain. Like it's not officially been revealed he is the it has been revealed to the audience, but he's supposed to still be trying to fool Ethan that he's not the villain, and yet he's not. Like, I have never seen somebody take a painkiller in such an obviously evil manner than Jon Voight taking this painkiller for his apparently busted up shot arm. It's just like you're supposed to be acting like you're still one of the good guys. You're not.
It's a very good point.
So he basically says, you can't tell anybody I'm still alive until this mission is over, and then we'll figure it out.
Also, such a weird little beat in this scene. I'm sorry, but like, there's as we have said, there is no sexual tension between Tom Cruise and Emmanuel Barrett. But then he's like, Claire, I mean, who knows what she's had to do? And it's like, dude, I'm pretty sure it's like a week. We are just days away from with that happening. But he's like, oh, it's got to be so hard on her. Who knows? And it's just like it didn't occur to Ethan to do anything before. And then he goes back and like they fall onto a bed or whatever. And it's just like, well, but now he knows he's alive.
Yeah.
Like what? Why? Where? Huh?
For sure. And also, like, there is the beat where like he's still got his innocence because he's picturing what really happened in the mission in his mind, and he's getting all these things right. But when he pictures Hannah being blown up in the car, at first he pictures Claire being the one who detonates, but then it rewinds because he's like, oh no, not Claire, and then it's Jim detonating the car. Yeah, so he's still got his innocence.
Yeah, and then she does. I don't know. Watching that part, especially, she like does that weird kiss on his thumb. I was sitting there going, what's going on? Where's Max for this? Come on, bring Max back and have this scene.
Yeah. Oh, there's a few kind of weird beats with Emmanuel Bert as well, because in that kind of when he's kind of piecing together what actually happened in the mission, when he pictures her blowing up the car, like Emmanuel Bert like looks like smolderingly directly into the camera for no reason, and is like, right,
yeah,
like I'm evil.
And honestly, like, I get the mathematical formula of we're going to cast Emmanuel Bert and there will be sexual tension. Like, I get that. And it kind of reinforces the miracle that is Rebecca Ferguson as Ilsa Faust, that like those two have genuine chemistry, and they have a very specific kind of chemistry that is not entirely sexual, not entirely romantic, not entirely platonic. It really does seem like they just are puzzle pieces that go together.
Yeah. No, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
It really is interesting. Like, they just have no fucking clue what to do with Claire.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, she's just floating around in the movie aimlessly.
I'm sure she'll survive it. Spoilers.
And so we're getting to the final stretch of it.
We're already getting into the kind of final half hour. We told you this
already
movie went swiftly.
We've been talking for 2 hours. We're already there.
We've not been talking for quite 2 hours yet. Yeah, but anyway, let's move on to this finale that we've got to so quickly.
Let's get into it. Yeah,
depending on your point of view. So we're cutting to a train. That's where the finale happens, on a train. On the TVG, and apparently. It's really interesting how this train sequence was like set up, because it's like a mixture of like models and live action and CGI. So they had like a couple of, when Jim and Ethan, towards the end of the sequence are like on the top of the trains and stuff like that. That's like kind of scale size models made in Pinewood Studios, and they've got like a big wind machine that produced winds of 140 miles an hour, which means they had to be really careful on set, because even the smallest object could basically turn into a bullet. So like these films have always been dangerous. They've just got progressively more dangerous.
Right.
And they couldn't fit the kind of live action sequences, the exteriors. Apparently the French railways wouldn't allow them to film on the French railways, so they're actually being filmed up here in Scotland, and it was on the Glasgow Southwest line. So that's
interesting
a bit of trivia bit for you.
Interesting historical trivia. Were this accurate at the time? The British side of this train trip was not high speed, because they had not actually, the rail that they put down couldn't take it. So the French rail, on the French side, the rail was stable, and they had done what they needed to do. So it was a high speed train after the tunnel, but not before in this direction, not on the British side.
Oh, okay.
Just to actually this, otherwise rich in verisimilitude film.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting tidbit there. I didn't know that, but I mean, it does seem for anybody who's experienced rail travel in the UK will not be surprised.
Yeah, I think I get to take that train this November, so here's hoping.
Oh, that particular train that goes through the Channel Tunnel?
Yeah, the current plan is to go over to London for like 2 weeks at the end of November, and then for my birthday, take a couple days and go over to Paris. Because I've never been.
Oh.
So, yeah. And that's Adam's personal corner for this episode.
Well, we've had a lot of time in Tangent Corner, and
we really have. We should really, do something with this space.
People are maybe used to the train being somewhat tangential. Anyway, we will get on with the plot.
I mean, if Abe Goldfarb had joined us on this episode, it would be a limited series.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's. This podcast has never experienced the joys of Abe Goldfarb. You'd have to search out my other podcast, the Guilty Pleasure podcast, for that. But no, there would have been like a song and dance number in the middle. Like, it's a whole experience, a great experience. But yes, we do need to get back to the plot. I'm going to get back to the plot right now. That's what I'm going to do. There's a lot of things happening on this train.
Erstwhile in Mission Impossible.
Oh dear. What's happening on this train? Many things. Everybody's on this train. All the characters have come together. Everybody's here for this party. Kittredge is here. He gets his train tickets on arrival because, Ethan wants him to know that he's in London and he gets some train tickets, so he knows where to go. Obviously, Ethan's on the train. Luther's on the train trying to block the signal to put a list out into the public that Max and her henchmen are trying to do. And yes, and also obviously Jim's on the train, Claire's on the train, and we're kind of cutting back and forth between various parties doing various things. Also, one of the little moments that I really enjoy in this scene is when Luther puts his phone in a way to try and keep jamming the signal, even though he kind of knows that he has to get up from his seat, because people might get suspicious. And then when he walks away and the one of the train people gives him his phone back, there's a henchman that gets really suspicious of him, the kind of secondary henchman. And it's just like I don't know, it's just a little fun note in this scene because it just kind of, the henchman is just kind of driven mad by it. And when Kittredge is walking through the train, the henchman is just trying to batter the toilet door down to get to Luther because he might be somebody who is suspicious. It's just funny.
Yeah. And Luther gets really upset too. You can tell when the guy, the busboy or whatever it is, the waiter hands him it, and he's so polite about it. And Luther is just like, "Oh, yeah, thanks."
Oh, and also we should mention that Luther is doing his hacking on an Apple because, much like the Bond movies, these films have corporate sponsorships that they've got to.
That's right.
They've got to promote.
Costs a lot of money to blow up an aquarium.
Yeah.
What are you flying on? Yeah. Is it British Airways? Are we also sponsored by British Airways? Yes. Yeah. Have we said British Airways enough so far in the movie? Oh, okay. Is that satisfied that contract? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we get to see Jim. I don't know if I should add a wink, wink. We see Jim walking around a lot to the point that Claire starts to follow him into the back and kind of get to the back of the booth area where there's all the luggage and everything, and Jim's just sitting there, and Claire obviously,
just the most trusting stuff.
Yeah, just reveals everything. It's not, she doesn't even try and be sneaky about it. She just puts it all out there for Jim.
Why are you saying it like that, Craig?
Yeah. Because we get the first of what would become kind of the signature mask reveal in kind of these movies where it isn't Jim, it is Ethan Hunt. And
again, as we've mentioned earlier on in the podcast, Tom Cruise has taken on the height and dimensions of Jon Voight by putting on a mask, because magic exists in this universe, as Adam established.
But they don't have the voice recorders yet, or the voice authenticators or whatever they call them. So he couldn't do any talking.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then, Jim is just there.
Yeah.
I don't really get that. He's just, hanging out in the thing. Because that doesn't seem to be a hallway to anything. So it's was he just standing there watching? Yeah. That was one thing where it's like, I really don't understand the psychology of this moment, but okay.
Yeah. And it's revealed Jim even knows that because what Claire asks why he did it, and because Ethan knew that Jim was the mole, but he didn't know if Claire was involved. So that was his way of figuring out whether or not she was in on it as well.
Yeah. And there's a note that I wanted to make here as well, where he's talking about that, and he's saying that Claire wasn't convinced that Ethan would fall for her, which, in terms of what the movie is showing us, we're not really convinced either because of the complete lack of sexual chemistry. But then he also says he was convinced because he had already tested the goods, which I was just like, oh,
very
gross.
classy.
Imagine describing your wife in those terms. Oh.
And he brings up the Bible verse too to link it back to the whole Bible thing of don't covet your
Thou shalt not covet their neighbor's wife.
Hey, would you guys mind if we pause for a second? I need to run to the bathroom. Thanks.
So after he kind of talks about his wife that way, Jim then shoots Claire and then escapes up to the hatch while Ethan is holding Claire, because even though she betrayed him as well, he still feels that kind of compassion for her, and then he ends up chasing after Jim, and they're on this, the speeding train and the helicopter. We get to see that Krieger is in the helicopter coming up behind the train, and during this whole sequence, we don't really have any more, there's not really any more cutbacks as much as there was prior.
No, it really kind of concentrates on this now. I like in the trains, when train scene started, we're cutting between Maxine and her aide and Kittredge and his guys and Luther and all these kind of different points of view, but like we kind of stick with Ethan mainly after they go out onto the top of the train.
Yeah, and what's interesting is it's one of those, in the same way in seasons prior where you see I guess it makes more sense, but when you saw Sylvester Stallone facing I can't think of his name right now, in Cliffhanger facing
John Lithgow.
Yeah, John Lithgow, and you're like, I don't know if that's an even match, but it seems like it is. That was kind of how I felt at points of Ethan facing Jim. Like, man, Jim is holding his own really well. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I think the scene in Cliffhanger kind of works because
he's been going through so much already,
Yeah, because he's going through so much already, and also because John Lithgow's quite tall, and they put him in a big jacket. He looks real bulky. And also because Sly is only not much taller than me. I'm 5'8". I think he's 5'9". Yeah. And I think John Lithgow's a legit 6'4" or something. So they really make a big thing of the height difference as well in that movie that kind of pays off.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. But with this one,
again, I suppose Jon Voight is a bigger he is it's a big age difference. So you're kind of Ethan Hunt has this because he's much younger, but he is a bigger guy. But again,
and Jon Voight has Jim Phelps has planned for this. He has those little magnetic things where he can hold on to and move. True. He's got the ropes and everything. Ethan's just clinging on by the his fingertips.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, because that Ethan Hunt's even in this movie, you kind of know Ethan Hunt's superhuman. That you just never quite believe that that he's going to do anything. He's always going to win. It's not quite. I'll make another example that is probably even more ridiculous. It's a bit there's a final confrontation in Under Siege 2 where Steven Seagal is facing down Eric Bogosian, and you're like, well, what's Eric Bogosian going to do?
This is where you just invert the Indiana Jones thing. and shoot him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Aaron Brosian's going to do.
Yeah. Should have done that. But again, it's a Steven Seagal movie, so even that probably wouldn't have, like,
There's the bit in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle where, like, the cop gets shot and he's like, bullets, my only weakness.
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, like, bullets are not Steven Seagal's weakness, because in the finale of Out for Justice, he gets shot by a fucking shotgun and still manages to decimate William Forsythe. So that, you know, I don't know what his weakness is. Maybe
Steven Seagal eats bullets for breakfast.
Yeah. His only weakness is his own ego.
Oh. Too true.
Absolutely. Fair point, Craig. Back with the plot continuity.
Yeah.
So we're on the top of a train.
Krieger is trying to get close enough so that Jim can kind of jump on and they can take off. And then Ethan is basically, he's holding on for dear life and he's trying to fight with them while he's fighting the helicopter that Krieger is smashing into him, or trying to slice him with, and then trying to make sure they don't leave by either latching the helicopter, things like that. But the tunnel comes up, and since Krieger is latched at the point, then he's unable to fly above the tunnel, and he has to fly within the tunnel in itself.
One thing I kind of love about, like, these films, and I'd forgotten about the very beginning, they have the scene with the guy, they give him the drink, he dies, and then they break the walls down and it's a set. And that's, of course, you know, they revisit that in Fallout. You know, this, like, I remember Mission Impossible 3 with the whole bridge sequence. Later on, like, the news is on and it's like, they're talking about it. And it's like, I had forgotten that that's very present here. Like, TV news is a huge character, and they report on, like, a helicopter flew into a tunnel. It was crazy.
Yeah, because, like,
these little beats.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, like you say, like, Sky News turns up a couple of times, you know, because, like, in the UK, in the movie. And one of the, I didn't mention this when it came up, but I'll mention it now because I've just remembered that I was like, Krieger really mingling, you know, going native and doing what they do in London, because, like, in the scene when they're at the hideout, like when Ethan is, like, checking the disc, like, before Krieger comes out with the disc, Krieger is drinking a beer, watching the football results. And I was just like, no, that's good.
Yes. Yeah, there are these little beats of, like, this is recognizable life. Yeah.
But yeah, also I wanted to mention, right, and again, this might mean something to you, Craig, because I know you've seen The Day Today. But I remember when I'd seen this, David Schneider is an actor in various British comedies, and I'd seen him, and it's always weird when you see, like, a TV actor in, like, a big movie, particularly a British TV actor. And he appeared in various sketch shows and various things. Yeah. And even as a kid, for seeing this, I was like, holy shit, that's David Schneider. And he plays the train engineer who is, like, being like, there's a helicopter on the back, you gotta, what is going on? You know, like, and then later on in the scene where, you know, the helicopter blades, like, stop just at Ethan's son, just before decapitating him, like, he faints, and, like, it always stood out in my head, and I think it's maybe just because...
Don't slow down, it'll hit us, speed up. Yeah.
I think it's a great little cameo. You know, it's one of the scenes that always stuck out to me.
Yeah, no, I remember. I forgot about him. Like, he's just there, kind of adding some lightness to everything that's happening right now. It should have been his POV, or we should just see it all from his perspective.
Be amazing. Yeah.
I just,
it's like the gravedigger joke. Yeah.
Oh dear, but
But the gum comes up again, and that's what
the gum does come up because he gave him the pack.
Yeah.
So he jumps onto the helicopter. The theme tune kicks in again, so you know shit's kicking off. And then he puts the gum on the front of the helicopter, and again it's not as iconic as the Langley scene, but like another one of the kind of iconic moments in this movie is when he jumps from the helicopter onto the train. The helicopter explodes, and then the propellers continually slow down, and you're like, oh, it really adds up to the tension of like, deep in your heart, that Ethan Hunt's not going to be decapitated, but still, it's a tense, really exciting moment.
And in case you're worried or thinking that maybe Jon Voight and Jim will come back, no, it shows that fiery helicopters land on top of him, and
he is very dead.
Yeah.
Yes, Jon Voight is never coming back.
Mission Impossible does a great job, the whole franchise, of making sure that the villains they want dead stay dead.
Yes, this is not the Fast and the Furious. Villains don't like come back from the dead and become a good guy. This is not that franchise.
McQuarrie actually talks about like Sean Harris, who plays the villain in Rogue Nation and Fallout. Like he agreed to Rogue Nation with like the contingent of like, but I have to die. Like you have to kill my character. I don't want to come back. And McQuarrie said, he's like, I don't think you know how Hollywood works. Like I can kill you, but if this movie's a hit, you got a twin you don't know about, or something like. Yeah, it's cynical, but back then, I mean, even if this was a franchise, like the only person you knew was sticking around was Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
So you could like actually kill characters. I miss those days.
I think it'd definitely be harder, you were talking about, to Adam killing people off now, like Benji or any of them. But yeah, I think about that every time a new Mission Impossible movie comes out because of this first one. Got rid of the team. I wonder if they're gonna take out any of them now.
I don't know. It is interesting because like you do feel like you have like a kind of core. You have a core that they can't get rid of now. Like most up until recently, you felt like most of the characters in Mission Impossible films are relatively disposable, apart from Ethan Hunt, and Luther, who's been a constant.
Right.
But now you've got as well as Luther, you've got Benji, who's first introduced in 3, and like you say, Rebecca Ferguson's character. You've got these kind of core characters now that you think like, oh, you can't really get rid of them. Like it'd be.
But
sad.
it's interesting because of this precedent. Like at the beginning of Fallout, when they kind of threatened to kill Luther, it's like, I mean, I guess they could, and that would be emotionally resonant and everything. Like I'm glad they didn't. Obviously, I love that character, and he has so many great moments in that movie. But like, and the whole point of it being like Ethan can't let go. He can't let, that really has continued on through the series.
So, I suppose we should quickly wrap this one up, because we're so good at doing things quickly. But like, we've just got like a couple of scenes right at the end of the movie just to tie everything up in a nice little bow. The plot has finished, but we get Ethan and Luther sharing a pint in good old London town.
We find out that Ethan's parents are okay.
Yes, yep. They're okay. They were we didn't really mention that. They were kind of framed on drug charges by Kittredge, but they have been totally exonerated, much to Ethan's mum's relief. And Luther is now no longer disavowed. He is avowed.
Reavowed,
reavowed, yeah. And then like that kind of wraps that up. And then we've got, instead of Voight on a plane, we've got Cruise on a plane, calling back to that earlier scene, and we do a kind of mirror scene where Cruise turns down the film, but the air stewardess says, "Are you interested in Caribbean cinema?" And Ethan Hunt pricks up his ears and is like, this could be a mission. And then we cut to Danny Elfman's
theme,
version
though.
of the theme tune. And that's the end. We did
Yay! We did it.
Crossed the finish line.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
You guys happy with it?
Yeah.
I am happy with it too. Yeah.
I got to
all
spend
agreed.
a couple hours talking about Mission Impossible with you guys. This was a delightful Sunday.
Yeah. We need to have you on to do a special, the entire Mission Impossible
podcast.
Man.
That would only be like if enough people listen to this episode and then review the episode, then we can set up a Patreon, because technically we cannot review any more of the Mission Impossible movies because they're not 90s movies. But if we have a Patreon, you can pay us to talk about whatever action movie you want from any era. So we'll talk about the whole franchise.
Dear listeners, you have the power to make my life not have been spent in vain. Because we barely touched on Ghost Protocol.
That is true.
There's a really good video on YouTube, or there's two. Mikey Newman and Patrick Willems both did videos about the Mission Impossible franchise, and they're really wonderful if you check them out, like to watch in conjunction with each other. I'm a fan.
And as we're kind of shouting out Mission Impossible things, I read various things about the making of Mission Impossible from various sources, including an article I read in a Prague newspaper, which told you about some of the locations that were filmed at, and how the U.S. Embassy was actually a mixture of the Liechtenstein Palace for the exterior and the National Museum for the interior, because the U.S. Embassy is apparently less glamorous than what is seen on screen. So various sources, but one of those sources was the Light the Fuse podcast, which is a podcast totally dedicated to the Mission Impossible franchise, and I got some cool little tidbits from that. So if people want more Mission Impossible in their lives, they can check that podcast out as well.
The 100th episode of that's so much fun because Macquarie's on there the entire time, and they get Simon Pegg and I think Haley Atwell, and it's just that's a really fun podcast. I've listened to a fair bit of that.
Yeah, and also, listener, if you think this episode is ridiculous, just wait until you check out the Empire Film Podcast interviews with Christopher McQuarrie. Oh boy!
What was it? 5 hours?
Oh yeah,
it's 5 hours all told for Fallout.
Just Fallout. Just Fallout is 2 part. I think it's 5 hours all told. Yeah.
Honestly, he is a great raconteur. I think you can still find it online. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith. He has an episode back when we were Creative Screenwriting Podcast of Chris McQuarrie Q&A screening after Valkyrie, and he's such a great storyteller, and he really will get into behind the scenes stuff, and he has no problem talking about especially if something works out well. He talks about he didn't want Benicio del Toro to play Fenster in Usual Suspects, and kind of how that came to be. And it's if you're interested in filmmaking, and especially contemporary blockbuster stuff, he is such a fascinating storyteller about that stuff, and it's very much from the inside because of his work with Tom Cruise and whatnot. I highly recommend just listening to Christopher McQuarrie talk about film. It's great.
Well, we will now officially bring this one to book, but before we head on out, do you have any plugs, promos, anything you want to shout out? And I just want to give you a note here that we might be filming in August, but this episode will go out around Christmas time. So keep that in mind.
Craig, you got anything?
Just my...
Oh, was it supposed to be me? Okay.
Yeah, I was heading to you first.
Gotcha. I actually don't. I just wanted to come on and talk about Mission Impossible. Ghost Waits is out. You can get it on Amazon, iTunes, and Google Play. Arrow-player.com, obviously, still a wonderful service. The Blu-ray is available. McLeod, his new movie, When I Consume You, with Perry Blackshear, Evan Dumichel, and Libby Ewing, just had its premiere I don't know. They haven't said yet what the distribution side of that thing is, but keep an eye out for When I Consume You. McLeod doing stellar work as always. And yeah, I mean, really, like, I just wanted to come on and talk about this movie. I love these movies. So thanks.
Awesome. And Craig, give us your usual plugs and social media details.
Yes, as Josh already said, I am 1/3 of the Bloodhound Picks, PIX podcast, where we talk about older, obscure, and entirely independent, usually horror movies. And we'll highlight them. We'll also kind of highlight members of the independent horror community, be it bloggers, filmmakers, screenwriters, actors, scholars, and so on, and kind of talking about what is it like trying to work in this genre in modern day, especially during this pandemic. Then if you want to follow me personally, you can at craig.dram, Draheim, on Instagram, or just Craig Dram on Twitter. And then Bloodhound Picks is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and there's the website, bloodhoundpicks.com.
And if you want to listen to any more of me, you can on my podcast, New Horror Express, which you can find at the website, newhorrorexpress.com, but also on Facebook and Twitter at New Horror EXP. Basically, I interview people from the world of horror, but also I have a monthly special where I look at a guilty pleasure movie from one of the films from the 2000s, horror films from the 2000s onwards. Kind of do that monthly, and you can also hit me up on Twitter if you want, at ScottMurphy85. You can hit this show up at Twitter at 90s_all. And if you've enjoyed this, all of this, all of which we've given you, all the tangents and all that, if you're really digging it, you can leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you can make those reviews 5 stars, that would be absolutely amazing, because we live in a world where if you don't give things 5 stars, people think they're shit. Don't know why that is, but that's just, we have to accept it. And yeah, that's all for this time. That brings this season to a close, and hopefully we'll come back for season 5 in the new year. More of which details coming later. But until then, see ya.